Hello, everyone. This is Ernie Humphrey, the CEO of Treasury Webinars, or is it? This might well be a deep fake. So I wanted to get everybody in the mood for our webinar today. I'm really excited about the webinar today. Different on a lot of fronts. The experience, where the title of the webinar is AI fraud, the CFO's worst nightmare. And what we're going to do today a little bit is we're going to scare you, and that's the point. And I've been scared just talking to Gabe about all the things that are going on and how sophisticated these organizations are. So I was remiss. Before we get started, I want to welcome Gabe Garcia. He's the head of partnerships for EFT Sure. So Gabe, welcome to the webinar today, and we'll get you a little bit more about EFT Sure in a moment. So I'm excited to partner with Gabe and EFT Sure. Hope this may be one of many webinars. So I want to give everyone a lot more content around this AI and fraud world that we're in, because it's going to keep on evolving, and we're going to have to figure out how to evolve with it. And not only what's going on, but a lot of content around how we can work internally with our teams and our software vendors. Well, no one else can do what EFT Sure does, but how they can help us with that. So Gabe, why don't you go ahead and get us to the, let's take a look at the housekeeping items. If anyone's interested in a certificate of attendance for today's webinar, you'll have to answer all the polling questions and remain on the duration of the webinar. If you'd like a copy of the presentation, please send an email to Ernie@chargywebinars.com. And then we have a very short survey at the end of the webinar today. So we sincerely appreciate your consideration in taking the survey, because we always strive to improve the ROI we offer our webinar attendees for their valuable time. And this webinar is a perfect example of how we change, how we evolve. And Gabe said, let's make this fun. And I said, you came to the right place. So with that, I'll hand the floor over to Gabe. Gabe, please take it away, my friend.
Thank you, Ernie, and good morning and good afternoon to everyone, and thank you all for joining. And like Ernie said, today is not going to be kind of a typical webinar. I do not want this to be boring or like a standard demo. I really want to show you the inner workings of cybercrime organizations, from how they operate to what methods they're using, and really, most importantly, how you can protect your business. So just a little quickly about us and who we are. So we are a global B2B vendor and payment validation platform. So we want to ensure that you're paying the right people and there's no fraudster or bad actor on the other side of the fence. We are a global company, so we have offices in Europe, the US, and Australia. We've been around for about 11 years. We have north of 3,500 customers and protected about 240 billion in payments last year. So with that said, let's dive in. So the FBI reported last year that there was about 9.5 trillion in global crime losses. We are seeing about, I would say, a 20% increase year over year. And now with the sophistication level of AI, I think that number will increase. The question is, to what multiplier? So let's start with, why is business email compromise so hard and difficult to prevent, right? We all see them almost every day, and there's many factors to it, right? And I think one we know is, there's a huge tech gap, and I can dive into a little deeper with that later. We also know there's a gap in the banking system, right? It's slowly starting to improve, but far from protecting you from fraud. We know from a business registration standpoint, it's never been easier to set up a business, and you can have multiple different trading names. They don't have to be connected to a bank, and that makes it very, very difficult to track. And lastly, supply chains. We're working with more and more vendors ever than before. And the relationships with these vendors are mainly over the internet. We trust digital communication, which also makes it very, very difficult to know who is on the other side.
Right. Let me jump in here. Another area which I would kind of mention is your employees and email. So are they trained? Do they know what to do? Do they know what to look at? Is that something you have conversations with a lot about your clients as well?
100%. You hit it on the head, Ernie, and I actually have some more slides that will dive a little deeper into some of that, the types of different fraud from,
Yeah,
executive to nefarious employee. Um, with AI, there's so many different kinds of ways they can get in, and I'll show you a slide on it a little bit later today.
great. Thanks.
So at the beginner level, this is how easy it is today to purchase this is a scammer kit for dummies on the dark web. This is $128 for you to get started, right? So these groups trade knowledge via the dark web. Some sell it even cheaper, and these tools are actually they're getting better and cheaper consistently. So, this is at the very, very beginning level of someone trying to pick it up. We know people have started leveraging, Chat GPT. There's also Worm GPT. There's many different types of cheap tools out there, like Trojan Access as well, and it's becoming more and more accessible. But I think from the movies, we've always portrayed, and Ernie did a great job of portraying one of them today to start this, uh, as, kind of this fraudster with a hoodie in the basement, right? But now we're starting to understand these are well organized strategic corporations. They're heavily funded and recruit some of the best hackers in the world. Now there's little known about them because, they kind of operate in the dark and they're very good at what they do. But we've been able to track some of this information down on the dark web, and that's what I wanted to show you today. But before we do that, I did want to pass the mic back over to Ernie to start with our first poll question.
All right. Thank you very much, Gabe. Let me go ahead and get that polling question. All right, here we go. Ooh, you gotta excuse me. I'm in fraudster mode, so I'm gonna make sure I get the right polling question list. All right, just trying to get a sense, level set here for Gabe to guide our conversation. Please go ahead and take a moment and answer the polling question asking you how often do you undergo specific anti-fraud training that includes awareness about AI generated deepfakes? Is it annually, quarterly, or during onboarding with my client, or never? So just interested to see where we fall there. What we're going to do is we're going to leave this polling question up just for another maybe 15 seconds or so. You guys are doing really good at answering, so that's quick. Also want to note that we can take your questions. You can go ahead and drop those in the chat or the questions area, whatever is easier. We have an absolutely amazing opportunity to ask questions of Gabe. So he is a world-renowned expert in this area. So please feel to do that. If we don't get to your question, we will answer that. I'll connect with Gabe and we'll get back to you and get the answer to that. So let's go ahead and take a quick peek at those results. And we see we have 38% annually, 35% quarterly, and 25% never. So, Gabe, your thoughts?
Wow, interesting. I actually have a slide coming up. I don't know if I want to give
Yeah.
it away, but I can give a little tease that I think it was business.com did a research study, and it said 1 in 10 executives have already experienced a deep fake within the organization. So it's very interesting to see this polling questions. And I think, I really enjoy kind of keeping this momentum going with the poll questions because it really ties into what the actual audience's experience and what, the feedback that I want to receive as well.
Do you see more anti-fraud training in certain industries, or do you think we have a problem that goes kind of across the board?
Well, I think the fraudsters don't discriminate on markets and verticals. They target everything, right? There's
Yeah.
and for the most part, you see I was listening to an AI thing yesterday and you know, there's when you go into kind of targeting the elderly from a personal perspective or even go to smaller businesses, right? The
Yeah.
money is going to be less, right? Maybe you get 20,000 or 50,000,
Yeah.
but it's a lot quicker turnaround. You can do this in 24 hours. When you have to go to a large corporation, right? It's much more strategic. You have to have a game plan and kind of a go-to-market strategy on how you're going to go do it. It's a longer time to get in. However, the rewards are much higher. So I think everyone needs to be looking at this
Right.
on how to protect themselves. And what I say also is, you should think like a cyber criminal, right? Think of how and do some of the pressure testing, right? Try to create a fake vendor in your system. Try to change bank account details. See if you can break the process in the system. And that gives you a good outlook of how easy it is and how vulnerable you may be.
Yeah. Right. Just a speaker note. It gets a little sticky after the polling question. There you go. You're good. Forward.
So I wanted to show you some of the famous and notorious hacker groups around the world. So Lazarus might ring a bell because they had a $1.4 billion heist, which is the largest heist ever recorded in the world. We see kind of this clear divide between the two types. You have the technical group, which is, I would say runs like a technology company. They have developers, pen testers, programmers, and, kind of strategic leadership at the top. But we also have this non-technical organization, which run more like, I would say, a recruiting firm or a sales function, right? They have flat hierarchy. They just have quotas and targets to hit. And these are evil organizations. And if you're not hitting some of your targets, they will threaten you and they will threaten your family.
Dave, how did you become aware of these groups? Is it on the dark web? Is it news? Or how have we been able to shine a little bit of a light on some of these organizations?
So we leverage, probably about, I would say, an organization of 50 or so different consultants
Wow.
in the industry to gain a lot of this knowledge. We also put some of these people, they are pretty much our consultant. They are ex-hackers that have now started their own business, whether that be as a cybercrime consultant or other facets. But we actually, we always try to get the most recent knowledge. Some of this information is from the dark web, like what I'm going to show you next on Fin7 is our marketing team did a great job to grab some of these screenshots from the dark web that were leaked. So this is Fin7. This is a Russian and Ukrainian organization, and they're famous for ransom attacks, phishing, VEC. When the war started, it created a huge divide and turmoil between the two groups. So one of the Ukrainian members decided to leak screenshots and a lot of the information that we were able to gather. The FBI, even with this information being out, the FBI is still looking for him. They kind of went dark and then have recently resurfaced, but they are still out there and now kind of actively being a cybercrime organization again. This is their org chart. So you can see at the top, the management team, they have developers, pen testers. But what's really wild is in the bottom, you see the affiliates that they own. They found out that they own multiple cybersecurity firms,
Oh,
and they were writing malicious code into their software so they could access it at any point. So, they are thinking outside of the box and making it easy for themselves. These are very strategic and well-run organizations, and they're finding any way impossible.
wow. So I got to jump in here because I'm scared. So I was just thinking, what if I wanted to try and engage, and maybe this isn't a good idea, engage a cybersecurity consulting firm? How do I vet them? How is there a way for someone to do that? I wouldn't even know that.
Well, I think, that is a concern, but I think,
Right.
we always advise everyone to
Yeah.
have a cybersecurity strategy, right?
Right.
You definitely want to do that. But, you know, through a solution like ours, you can verify business entities too, right? To make sure there is no fraudulent
Yeah.
activity. They are not on any of the U.S. Treasury OFAC sanction lists. There's many ways to then actually vet these companies to make sure that they have no fraudulent activity
Yeah.
or are associated with the cybercrime organization.
Yeah. I think that's a great point. Just to kind of hit on a little bit more is just that it's hard to keep up on the regulations, if not impossible. Who's on the OFAC list? Why are they there? So it's to expect a company to stay on top of that is really not reasonable. And if you're the CFO and you send money somewhere, guess what? Your career is going to take a little bit of a hit, if not a total hit, and your company's brand is going to take a hit as well. So that's one of the reasons this is so important.
Yes, and it's, it goes beyond that because then you have prospects and customers leaving. You need to hire a PR. You have the legal battles. It can be it's the number one way to cripple a business. And in today's digital age, it's probably the most important it's ever been. This was actually estimated by the FBI. So Fin7 has over 8,000 victims across the globe, and they've stolen about $1 billion total over in damages. And this is not a large organization. They're somewhat small when I showed you that notorious list. So the ROI per employee is pretty high for them, but they are an evil organization. So how do they operate? Well, kind of like us. They have a marketing team. They have a lead gen team. They have a database. They create a go-to-market strategy and orchestrate their attacks. Their bank is a little different than us, and I will touch on it in a second. This is this is Fin7 CRM. So this is a screen grab that we were able to gather on the dark web. So this is 80,000 finance leaders and team members with headshots. You have your company logo, you have descriptions, and you even have engagement scores. So if you're a finance leader in the room today, you better believe you're in one of these CRMs, if not multiple CRMs. And they don't just know you and your team, they're starting to realize your workflow and your system and how you work internally. What are the policies and procedures in place? And that's when it gets very, very scary, right? And that's why I think it's very, very important to test your own system. And they're enriching their database with all legitimate sources like us, from ZoomInfo to Crunchbase to LinkedIn, Dun & Bradstreet, you name it, right? They are doing standard API calls just like us. But it's a little bit different than the bank, right?
Wow.
So they are siphoning money through money mules. And a money mule, is a person who is going to transfer those illegal funds on behalf of the criminal, right? And for the most part, it's usually they're unknowingly doing it, right? They have no idea that they're transferring this money. The other way also is they actually steal identities and then they'll open bank accounts across the globe. So that's another scary aspect, is you could get your identity stolen and then have bank accounts in Switzerland or wherever it may be. So that's also something to look out for, because once they are able to receive the money, they want to spread it out as quickly as possible, because that will eliminate their risk, right, and mitigate their risk from it being taken.
Yeah, I have a famous, and I actually had a little bit of experience with fraud in Treasury. That we experienced some fraud, and what the bank told me was, once it gets out the door, you're not getting it back, which is pretty much true. And that was before the screen you just showed us. This was just a huge bank, used to be Wachovia, and they're like, I got a little bit back, but they're like, just think of it this way: if it's out the door, you're not getting it back. Don't even think it's happening.
Yeah. And that's the unfortunate part. Banks aren't always liable for it, right? And so
Right.
that's what can be very,
Yep.
very scary. You can lose a lot of money and it disappears so quickly. But I'm going to scare everyone a little bit more. And at some point, I'll make this positive and won't make it so dark. But everything I've showed you is kind of what has been happening, right? And now we can call it Cyber 2.0, right? This is the generational shift of AI. So these organizations are now starting to implement AI tools. At the very low level, we started with, using a chat GPT or a worm GPT. Then they started doing voice cloning. Then it started to go with deep fakes. But now they're starting to leverage AI agents. And these agents, they have memory, they have reasoning, and they have the ability to use tools. So now you can create an army of agents, millions of agents, and they're all strategically orchestrating attacks. So this is just the tip of the iceberg. So this is an example, right, of kind of how I showed it before, but now they can start using some of these large language models and tools, right? Uh, you know, they can use them in the lead gen, to their database, to the go-to-market strategy with deepfakes, to even siphoning the money, right? They can do deepfakes to steal identities. And now they can build these kind of, I would call them like almost hyper-targeted campaigns where, the agent is doing the research. It's enriching the CRM and it's starting these attacks, right? From, it could be BEC phishing, but it can be imitating a real human, right? And these agents, they don't sleep like us, right? This is 24/7. You're deploying a robot soldier and it's learning, it's interacting, and it's getting smarter and smarter and smarter.
It seems to me like they would find the weakest link as well. So you've got the CFO, but as you mentioned, they also have everyone that can probably affect payments. And they go at them through LinkedIn, Facebook, anything else. And then this agent looks, who opens it, who did this, who's the weakest link. And then I'm sure they zoom in on that. And that's where they really get in.
You hit it on the head, Ernie. That's exactly what they do. And in a few slides, I'll show you an example of how that actually happened. Um, but this is just our marketing team that had fun with it. I'm not sure if you can hear the sound or kind of figure out who is real.
Yeah, that's okay. Which it's hard to tell without the sound. But I can say that I was shocked. I have a podcast, so I was supposed to record something and I didn't get it done. And then they put the recording together, and it was me speaking the text, and I was like, I didn't do that, and it's absolutely frightening. And especially we have to look at people that are out there. So it's great if your folks are out there doing podcasts and webinars and public speaking, but that gives them the voice. So my wife's like, your voice is so out there, I can't believe that. So that's something that we need to be thinking about as well.
100%. They only need a few seconds to
Yeah.
clone you, and that's this was our marketing team. I think they did this. It was very early this year, end of last year, and no knowledge on how to do it, and they were able to pull it off in an hour, right? And that was probably what, 9 months ago. And now it's even easier, right, for anyone to be able to do this. And we kind of played this game where it's, well, can you tell which person is actually real in that video? Unfortunately, no one is real in that video, even though they might look like it. But it's becoming more and more sophisticated and easier to access. And this is a perfect example, like you said, Ernie. Is this is Arab Engineering. They're British architecture and engineering firm. They got into their system, right? So they were able to see everything. They acted as the CFO and multiple other finance leaders that were all fake, to then dupe other finance members to send 25 million in 15 transactions. So you're right, Ernie. They hit the weak links and they acted as the CFO and other leaders on this call, but they were all fake and it was all internal. And so, that's the depths that they can go and the different ways that they can get in. Oh, we got another poll question. I'll pass it to you, Ernie.
All right, here we go. See if I can do a better job of operating the polling question this time. There we go. Learning on the fly, just like generative AI. So this is, I think Gabe will share some statistics. I'm really curious about this one. Have you or any executives at your company faced a deepfake threat in 2024 or 2025? Yes, that you know about. No, answer no if you're pretty sure. You have to be right in the loop. And then you don't know. You don't know. There's nothing wrong with that. And I would say the vast majority of people, some people at least, that said no, and maybe they don't know. So I'm interested to see where we fall, and then Gabe will share some statistics that his team has found. So I'm going to go ahead and give you guys a few more seconds. If you're interested in receiving a certificate of attendance, please let me know. Also want to mention, we'll talk about the details later. Gabe has been kind enough to share with us a few of their great resources. So in the upper right toolbar under materials, we have their cybersecurity guide, and we have an internal threat guide, and we also have a few other great resources for you as well to talk about. So please go there. These are great reads, incredibly valuable for you and your team, right? So please go take a look there. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. Then we'll take a quick peek at the results. All right, let me see. I think I messed up. Share again. Try again. All right, here we go. So we have 18% said yes, 39% said no, and 43% I don't know, which I'm not shocked at the I don't know. So even 9 people out of 66, that is scary in and of itself. What do you think, Gabe?
Yeah, I think what makes the most sense is I don't know.
Yeah,
You don't
true.
know if you've you spoke to someone that wasn't real on the other side of the fence. I think that's the biggest one. Um, our marketing team is trying to do some of those spoofs, um,
Yeah.
but I can't tell anymore, and it's very, as you saw from that video, it is so hard to tell if that's a real human or not, even if you know the person. So I think that really resonates with me, is that myself, I couldn't tell either. So very interesting, Ernie. Thank you for that. So, this was the study that I was talking about. This was by business.com. So they said, with their research they did, 1 in 10 executives say their company has already faced a deepfake threat internally. But Deloitte projects losses from deepfakes to exceed 40 billion in 2027, which is really, really scary. This is another AI tool. This is called Business Invoice Swapper. So this is another thing you can buy in the dark web. Um, yeah, I think it's via Telegram group, I think is how you get it. Um, but this basically, it sits on an infected email client, right? And it automatically changes bank account details on the payment related file. So the hacker will then receive a message when the bank details have changed successfully. So this can run on 30,000 devices all at once. I mean, without you even knowing, it will automatically change banking details, which is really, really scary stuff.
Yeah.
And like I said before, this is just the tip. This is just the start of it.
And I would say that
So what have
from my
go
let me
ahead,
let
Ernie.
me jump in here because this scares me because I don't know, especially when I was in treasury, right? That how we would have caught them changing the bank account details on the invoice itself. I would have never thought that, that was even possible. So that one's a real just sorry, I put my treasury hat on. That's a huge eye opener for me.
Yeah, it's very scary. And all of these tools are on the dark web and they're not very expensive is the other scary part, right? You can get those remote Trojans for, I think they're $400. I showed you the dummies one at the very entry level is $128, but everything is pretty cheap. And then, they have groups in there where they can help you with new tools coming out and how to use it, etc. So it's pretty scary stuff nowadays. So I think I also just wanted to kind of look at, well, what have we been doing, right, to mitigate some of this? And I think the manual controls and the callback procedures and the internal audits, these are all great practices, but it's not stopping fraudsters from getting in. You're getting a false sense of security. You know, this was not designed to mitigate against AI, right? With the sophistication level today, these tools are starting to be no longer relevant. And so you need to start putting in new solutions as well as policies and procedures to protect yourself from this. So this is kind of what Ernie brought up earlier, is kind of the ways they're getting in, right? Um, this is only increasing and this is only a few of them, right? But now you're starting to see some of those AI augmented scams, right? You're starting to see the fake invoices as well. We kind of knew about the BEC and the phishing attacks, but now you're dealing with, kind of that identity theft, right? Um, and then you also have, the internal stuff as well as just standard human error, right? We all can make mistakes as well. But I think the one thing it's missed the most is, okay, well, I've put the right cyber strategy in place, and I have all of these, financial procedures and policies in place, and I'm protected. But what if you have 20,000 suppliers, and now one of them gets hacked? Now you're vulnerable because that's a real email address from a vendor that you might have known for 10 years. They can see all correspondence that's transpired between you. They create a personal touch, checking on your vacation, and then they create urgency. And they say, hey, so I don't get in trouble, I was supposed to do this last week. Would you mind changing my bank account details before you submit payment today?
Yeah.
And for the most part, they're going to do it because it's a trusted email and they've known that person for so long. And that's another easy way they can get in.
Yeah, let me hop in here. So we have a question, and I just want to comment on it and get your take on it. So, and I've had these conversations with folks. So some people are establishing like a given verbal password or some kind of fail safe. To me, I was like, okay, that would work. However, there's a couple big things. One is, how does that password change that can still get out? And secondly, if you're an AP, I was a treasury person, and if I thought the CFO was on my phone on me, right, about putting a payment out, I would do it. If he threatened my job, I don't care what the password is, and until you've been in that seat, I think it's hard to know. And then that requires all your folks to be educated, which is not easy to do. So I'm sorry if I gave the answer, but that was my thought.
No, I agree 100%, right? The urgency is the big one. And sometimes it's not your CFO, right? In the email, it looks like the CFO's email, right? But it's not the CFO. That is a fraudster saying, hey, we need to submit payment for this invoice immediately. And you don't want to get in trouble. So, putting more segregation of duties, right? Adding more levels of security and people that need to take a look, the better chances you have. So great point, Arnie. So I think this is a good overall way to look at this, right? If we look at your cyber strategy, let's call that on the left side, the front door, right? That's your network, your applications, your database, your server, your endpoints, your browser, et cetera, right? Everything that we need to look to protect our business. But on the right side, the financial controls, the CFO and that team, what solution do they have? Right? They've kind of been sitting there stranded without a paddle, praying that the cybersecurity strategy is going to work. But we know we're still getting, and they're still getting in, and there's 9.5 trillion in cybercrime, right? So, you know, leveraging a solution like us in this day and age is very, very important. There's many different solutions out there, but that's kind of why our founders started this, because they saw this huge gap in the tech stack, right? You're trying to stop all of these things from coming in. The different ways they're getting in now is insane, right? But I think that is the first layer, but you still have to protect your financial controls, right? Because the finance team has the number one target on their back. 99% of all of these cybercrime organizations are financially motivated. So who do you think they're going to target? Number one on that hit list. It's the finance team. And so that's where a solution like us would come in. I'll show you kind of how our solution works. We go through a very kind of multi-layered verification process. We start by verifying that entity, right? And that's IRS records, right? We're looking at TIN, EIN, social, etc. We also need to verify the bank account owner, right? We leverage a lot of different databases from Bank Consortium to open banking technology, but we've also built our own database, being around 11 years, as well as through acquisition. We leverage the US Treasury for OFAC sanction screening. Um, We have business rules and thresholds so we can flag some of these anomalies. And then we're looking at website legitimacy, address, phone. And if it gets to that point, we even have security analysts make these calls. And this is, they're looking at IP address and, hey, are they masking their location? They should be in Wisconsin, but they're on a VPN that shows them in the Ukraine, right? So
Eh,
a very detailed
Yeah.
verification process.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ernie.
Let me jump in here. So, um, I think a point that I want to share with folks, which this isn't a marketing ploy, but as Gabe said, there may be some other players that do part of what you do. But I want you to share with the folks what you guys do in terms of a guarantee, which I was shocked by, and I really don't see anybody else really being willing to do that.
Yeah, thanks, Ernie. So, in 11 years, knock on wood, we've never had one uh, issue with fraud for any vendors that we have verified. So, we are very confident in what we do, and we are putting our money where our mouth is. So, we are guaranteeing up to $1 million for any vendors that we verify. If you experience any fraud, we will cover it up to $1 million. So, thank you, Ernie, for adding that piece as well. And let me just lastly kind of show you how our solution works throughout the payment lifecycle. So we start with your existing data, right? That's your vendor master file list, right? That's where we start. We scrub that whole thing. We then would cover anything new. So that would be new vendors as well as any change requests, right? And we see a lot of fraud in the change requests. Hey, I need to change my bank account details. So we would cover all of that. We take that pain and stress away from the finance team. You can also check it at the, kind of that payment journal level prior. And then lastly, you can check it at the moment of payment. So you are getting real-time verification that you're good to go and you're able to pay that vendor, and there is no bad actor on the other side of the fence. Got another poll question, Ernie, so I will pass it over to you. I think you might be on mute. Well, I can ask the poll question if you'd like, Ernie. So are you
Sorry,
interested in learning more?
sorry,
Go
I was
ahead.
on mute like everyone else. I'm going to save that one for about 10 minutes from now. So can you click us back to the next slide or last slide, please? I want to do some Q&A. So, so
Perfect.
yeah, so Gabe, let me go ahead. So we've got some interesting questions here. And I don't know the answers. It's not my bailiwick. I'm not sure. Technically, I don't know how it works. Uh, we have discussions about how blockchains people might be using blockchain or that type of technology to help fraud at all, or is that something you guys use, look at? I don't know the answer to that.
That side is still coming, right? Because,
Yeah, right.
like I said, it's so easy to create a business entity and a new business today, right? And you can name it whatever you want. You can copy another business, but it doesn't have to be tied to anything, right? So that's why it's very difficult to track. If it doesn't have to be tied to a bank account or a crypto, right? But I think, when it's not tied to a bank account, you know, that is a worry, right?
Sure,
There's a
right.
reason there's a reason that it's not tied to a bank account, right? But I think as we evolve and everything is becoming more and more digitized and we're getting more into the crypto space, this will be somewhat normal, right? But there'll be levers that we're able to then go ahead and verify, right? We know now, and you're now taxed and it's tracked, right, from a crypto perspective. So they're moving towards that. We're just not all the way there yet for crypto.
Right. If, so when you're having conversations with potential clients, what are some of the most common questions that you get or objections? Like, I don't know if this is important, and have those questions changed over the past 3 months or so?
I think a lot of people didn't know a solution like this was out there.
Right.
and they're shocked, and the kind of the light bulb goes off, and they go, wow, I didn't even think of this. Like, why have we not implemented something like this and put it in place to be able to stop it? Because I can stop it right at the point of payment, right? The most vulnerable spot, right? Because that's 99% motivated, right? So it's all financial usually. So if I can am able to stop it there, I think that's one of the most important ways to do it. I think it's more educational, Ernie, and I think a
Right.
lot of people lean on cybersecurity to protect them from this, and we think you still need to do that. Like, that is something that is very, very important to protect a business. But I think you also needed implementing a solution for the finance team as
Right.
well.
A couple questions around this, and this was my question as well. So a lot of times what we see now, risk is siloed. So we might have treasury payments, we might have risk management, we might have the CIO. So how are companies that you're working with, how do you get them to get that collaborative approach to this that it needs, given those two distinct sections and where that kind of falls in the middle quite a bit?
Yeah, I think it's very important, right? Because this has all usually been on the CISO side, right? From
Yeah.
a cybersecurity perspective. Um, but really throughout the life cycle, it needs to be looked at, right? Because if you look at it from the onboarding perspective, is very, very important. And whether you use a procurement solution or not, right? Then when you're in the ERP, also can be vulnerable. Or if you also have a treasury application, right? As well as on the payment side. So we are, and just something I'd like to add is, we have our own portal, we have an API, as well as then we integrate into procurement, ERP, and treasury applications,
Okay.
because we don't really want to mess with the workflow, right? We want you
Sure.
to use your existing workflow and to be able to leverage verification and validation within that workflow. But I think everyone's starting to learn that they need to start to look at the financial aspect of it and not just on the IT side. So it's starting to be more relevant conversations,
Yeah.
as finance and security go hand in hand.
Yeah, I would say I always want people to take an action from this webinar. And one of the actions, which I'm hoping will take place, is conversations with IT, with risk management, with procurement. So one of the things we're doing to scare you straight a little bit is to inspire you to have these conversations. And I always talk about it. The cost of not doing it is incredible as well. A couple of different other areas to explore here. And I might not be typical, but what does the implementation timeline look like, and how much effort, does it take from the folks to get onboarded and get going?
Well, it's pretty quick if you're using us as a portal, right?
Okay.
Just as an application that's sitting outside, right? We can get that up
Right.
and running very, very quick. And our automated verification is very high in the US, but we are a global organization too. Um, So that's pretty quick. If you want to implement in your workflow, right, that is a little bit different story depending on if we have the integration already built,
Right.
right, to ERPs, Microsoft to SAP to Workday, or if it's in a Coupa or an Esker or Treasury like Kyriba or FIS, right? So we have a lot of these integrations already built, so they're plugins and can do it a little bit a lot quicker. But then there's also APIs. So if there's something that we are not integrated to and you want it in your workflow, that would be a little bit more extensive. But you're technically just making API calls, right? And we're giving
Right.
you the green thumbs up or green thumbs down.
Right. So I'm gonna ask you this question. So just along the lines of implementation. So we always have this thing now called customer success. So for your existing customers, just touching on a little bit deeper, a little bit about the unparalleled knowledge that you have in your team to stay on top of things, but what you do to support your customers if they have concerns.
Yeah, absolutely. We make sure that that's a great point too. We want to make sure that our customers are leveraging this to the full capacity, right? And leveraging it in the right way, right? Ernie, if it's a portal, right, and it's separate, we need to make sure that every single new vendor is going through our portal to be verified, right? And you're not going around it or kind of doing it through your ERP. When we're in kind of your existing workflow, we can set actual permissions and parameters to say you are not allowed to pay unless it's verified through us. So we can stop it there, right? When it's in your actual workflow, like in an ERP, we can stop someone from paying when a change request happens because it needs to be re-verified through us. So that's a great point, Ernie. And we have a great customer success team that always is learning and looking for new ways to help our existing customers.
Yeah, and just another question. I'm starting to answer my own questions. I'm good at that. So it seems to me you guys have some huge clients, right? So they realize that they need help. So how do those conversations go, and how does a light bulb go on for them? Like a huge Fortune 100 company, how does that light bulb go off?
Well, I think also, Ernie, you got to think about this is, a lot of people are, they find us because they're reactive, right? They experienced
Sure.
a fraud that happened, right? But now we're starting to get proactive conversations, right? People getting ahead of it because they know that maybe someone that their competitor, someone in the industry just got hit big time with fraud, right? So I think that's a very, very important aspect is we need to start being more proactive before something does cripple a business, right? Because again, this is the easiest time to steal someone's identity. And another good one is someone once told me, with now everything being digitized and so quick and easy, right? We have instant payments, but with instant payments instant fraud can also happen, right?
Yeah.
There's less policies, less procedures in place, so it can happen quicker and faster. So something also we can look at. But from an overall perspective, we still work with everyone, right? Because we know SMB is a target, mid-market is a target, and very, very large enterprise is a target. So we want to be able to cover it all. But, I think from an enterprise level, I think that's usually uh, that type of customer is more proactive, right? Where they're because they're so large, they're hunting solutions like us to make sure that they have something in place.
Right. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and launch our final polling question here. Again, anyone interested in receiving certificate of attendance for today's webinar, you'll have to answer the polling question. I appreciate your consideration and answer the polling question, not only for myself, but for my partner, EFT Sure, which is definitely commitment to thought leadership and impacting the career success of those of you who may use their software. So I want to make sure that we all answer the polling question for us here. So, Gabe, I know you could talk about this for hours. So, I want you to share with me maybe one story of where you've just gone in or heard from your team where you've been the most shocked about what was going on or what wasn't going on, and then comment to this as part B. So, it seems to me that you can probably have a lot of holes in place, but implementing the right solution can get you pretty far up the curve pretty quickly. Usually it takes, a while and there's a lot of disruption, right? It seems to me like you can have a lot of exposures and then just taking the step is going to close a lot of that and maybe help you sleep better at night.
Exactly, Ernie. And I mean, I don't think we have enough time for all of the wild stories I've heard.
Yeah, just
But,
one or
but one
two.
one one that recently was a private equity firm, right? And it was the CFO actually got duped, right? He clicked on the email, right? So then they were in the system. So once they're in the system, they could then see, okay, well, what are the next funding rounds for each of the companies that they have coming up? So they basically saw what company it was. They researched that company. They acted as that company and sent an email to the CFO saying, hey, can we schedule this payment sooner because of X, Y, and Z that's coming up, right? We need the payment a week early. So the CFO asked to jump on a call. So they acted as that partner, right? And they deep faked the CFO
Wow.
for I think it was 1.8 million funding round. They did it 3 more times before the actual private equity firm found out. And I think they lost. I think it was $6.2 million. So how easy and how scary it is, right? That's these guys are good. This is no longer, the guy that look how Ernie looks with his hood and the glasses, right? These are well-run organizations.
No one can aspire to look as good as me, not even a deep fake, but we already know that. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and give everyone a reminder. The polling question is still up. Please go ahead. I'm going to leave it up for just a few more seconds, and then we'll go ahead and have some closing comments. So Gabe, I want to give you the floor. First, I'm going to thank you for your time and your great insights. I want to let you leave us with 2 or 3 things that you really want people to take away from this. And also, what is the action that you think would be most valuable for folks to take potentially as a result of this conversation today?
Yeah, thank you, Ernie. I like I said before, I think you really need to be testing your own system, right? Testing, pressure testing, finding holes, thinking like a cyber criminal, right? You need to think, well, what are the ways I just learned about? Now let me see if I can go do that in my system, right? That's a big one, right? Because if you're not looking at that, someone else is going to find the holes for you. So I think that's very, very important. Um, the second thing is I think you need to start looking and researching solutions that are out there similar to us, right? And looking at actual financial solutions that can help protect you. Um, there's also, deep fake solutions out there, right? I can see if this is a deep fake or not with biometrics, but they're getting smarter and smarter and smarter. I also think you just keeping your pulse on, you know, AI, right? Because I think it's very, very important to be leveraging it and using it personally, but also knowing kind of where it's going and the trends, right? Because if it's out there, we know that cyber criminals are also using it as well. So I think, making sure that you're kind of aware of what AI tools are out there, how to use AI, and kind of what's coming next is extremely important.
Thank you. Also forgot to mention, I believe on the last slide, there's a link. So EFT sure has a really quick assessment tool for you to take. It's probably like 6, 7, 8 questions. So the hyperlink is there. If you want the slides, please let me know, or just go to the EFT Sure website and look at the resources, and that'll come up. Incredible, blew me away on the great resources that they have. This webinar, you guys know me, I, I always like do my own content. I didn't have to do a thing for this webinar, so that is extremely unusual. And also, hope you guys all had the opportunity to connect with the EFT Sure before, but I believe you are going to have what I can tell is an enormous booth at the AFP conference in Boston. So if you are going to the AFP conference and you want to have some in-person conversations, I'm sure that I know their booth is going to be interesting, and you don't know what I might be dressed in, so that might be a reason for you guys to go.
Yes, thank you, Ernie. I hope you show up in the hood and the
Yeah.
sunglasses. Um, and Ernie, feel free to share my email with everyone if they'd like to
Okay.
reach out.
Absolutely.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm
And also,
happy to get them in
yeah,
contact and give them all their
I also want to
information.
let people know we have those documents in the area, so you can go ahead and download those. So with that, I'm trying to trademark my closing comments. So you should fund me trademark. Everyone on this webinar, please have the courage to live your treasury and finance truths, and have the courage to be, or dare to be, great at everything that you do within your job and your personal life. Till next time, everyone, take care.
Thank you, Ernie. Appreciate it. And thanks everyone for joining.